Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it is March 7th of 2023. It's almost 9 p.m. here in Fort Worth, Texas. There's my cat, our cat, over there on the bed. She just loves to be petted, especially by me. So she came in here a while ago and I went over and petted her and she really loved it. Then she just fell asleep over there, but I think her eyes are open now. Can't tell for sure. Well, I have been playing with my new cell phone, Samsung. Oh my God. Terrible to get old. Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus. And I just love it. However, well, it's been a couple years since I've been in and had my eyes tested, and I haven't had them tested until then for like years and years. But I think a couple years ago when I went, the doctor found, cataracts off in the corner though. And she said, well, it's not really. So I think maybe they have expanded because I'm having, this is a great display, but I'm having some trouble, seeing it. So I think I'm going to have to get in and then I think I need to see the dentist or a throat doctor or whatever about whatever's going on there. I'm still having my dizziness. I haven't fallen, but I've come close every day to falling. And I'm really, having difficulty getting back. Just about a few days before I had this other thing hit me where I can't hardly walk. And I have to hold on to the, I had to go by ambulance to the emergency room. And then before that happened, a couple of days before, I carefully, but I made it like 2 blocks to a donut shop and to Brahms in the morning, and I was very proud of myself making it back home. And then it got where I have difficulty making from my room to the kitchen. I have to hold on to the wall and whatever. And the bank is half a block from here. I've been needing to get to the bank half a block. And I started out a couple times and I couldn't make it. Started out, I think, day before yesterday, and from this apartment, and some of you have seen the video, have seen a video of me how far it is, just out to the parking lot. I couldn't make it that far. But tomorrow I do need to get to the bank. And now I've had some mobility problems, but my grown son has, taken care of those. But now I can't depend on him. He'll lose a key to the mailbox or to the gate. He'll lose his billfold or my billfold or my bank card, or I mean, it's just, and he's, you know, he's, I just can't depend on him. And that's kind of pissed him off because so got a few things I need to do. One is I need to get to the mailbox. I mean to the bank. I think I felt a little bit better today. A little bit. But this has been really slow, and I'm 81, I'm going to be 82 here at the end of the month. And I'm thinking, if I'm at this level and I don't improve, what's the next year going to, what kind of. Now, the ex-wife, she, is wheelchair bound. And she says, well, just get a wheelchair, And I explained to her, when you go to that level, that, okay, you go to a wheelchair, next step, bed. Next step, cemetery. I mean, really. So now I have lost, but I think that's part of the problem. I've lost almost 100 pounds in a short period of time. I was almost worried about approaching 300 pounds, worried about what's going to happen. The wheelchairs were falling apart, on me anyway. What's going to happen? And now I'm down to 202 pounds. One of the people here on YouTube made a comment a while back about, man, that wheelchair, or the chair you're in, it's squeaking and it's, whatever. And it was true. Every time I moved, popping or whatever. Now I'm down, in weight. But I think that's part of the problem. I think because of me not drinking water ever, and my diet and everything else, and then for me to lose, I think my body adapted, my body adapted over the years, and we're talking since grade school. I drank, I drank Coke. Actually, I drank Pepsi until I was 26, and then got married at age 26 to Darlene, and she drank Coke. And so when she was going to, the grocery store, she'd be loading up on 2-liter bottles of Coke and 2-liter bottles of Pepsi. And I just said, don't buy any more Pepsi, I'll drink Coke. But very little water, almost none. And you're not supposed, I don't think you're supposed to be able to live, without being hydrated. Some of the stuff stuff about hydration and all that kind of stuff has changed a little bit. If you look back at news and videos and things, going back a few years, you see everybody walking around with water. Everybody walking around with, different types of things of water. You don't see that as much, but people still realize you do need to be, don't be drinking soda pop, But I got married at age 26, and we were married about 12 years till I was about 40, and then the wife wanted a divorce, and I gave her the divorce. And then after a while, Larry King on the radio, before he was on television. I didn't like him when he went on television, but on the radio he was fantastic. And he had a guest on there, a lady who wrote a book, Classified Love. And it was about her using, classified ads to meet people, and the whole thing, everything about it. And I don't think I bought the book, but I listened to Larry King and her being interviewed. And then I started doing some classified dating. And of course I went to extremes on it. And I was also like collecting data. I mean, not for an article or not, but just for, and I did all kinds of things. Advertised in first in one of those things. Didn't advertise, somebody else advertised. A couple. And, it was sold in Quick Trips. I don't think it was sold, I think it was for free. And I did that. I met a couple. And then there was out in Overland Park, Kansas, a rich part of the Kansas City area, and they had a nice, I think it might have been a weekly newspaper though. But in the back they had a thing called, I think, Classified Love or something like that. No, Tomorrow's Friend, I think was it. And then I started putting advertisements in there. And then I started doing things like nobody was putting their name in all these people. And I put my name. And then some of the women, we were writing letters, anyway, I learned a lot by, like when I started, I used the post office box at the newspaper in Overland Park, Kansas. And I got, for each ad, when I ran my little ad, 6 women would contact me. I'm interested in the opera and eating at the finest restaurants and that kind of stuff. So I did that for a few weeks, and I thought, I've got a post office box in Raymore, Missouri, a little tiny town, And so I used that post office box, and I got, guess how many? Every week, 6 things. And they said, I like eating at McDonald's, and I like going to the movies. I mean, not the opera and not whatever. These women were going by the address. Then women said, of course it was answered through the mail and stuff like that. And then some of the women said, you should put your phone number. And I said, women aren't going to call the phone. Oh, yeah, we would rather, just having to write, So I put my phone number. And, wow. And I put in a special phone line with a telephone answering machine or whatever. And I got told this story, like when I was working at, years and years later, at a hospital. I don't know. Well, not the main hospital, but the small hospital where everybody out there was friends. We all knew each other and that kind of stuff. And then I told. Now, some of the women didn't believe me. And then I said, well, listen, all these women who answered my advertisement, they didn't know what I looked like. They didn't know anything about me at all, so it has nothing to do. I'm not saying that I was some type of this is not exact, I can't remember exactly what, they weren't, this was blind, stuff. So, but they didn't believe, a whole bunch of them, the people I worked with, they never believed that I did that. But man, I learned a lot, and then some of these women also were sort of doing the same things when I would, date them. They'd say, we'd look at the newspaper. It was a weekly, yeah. Oh, and then the women would say, yeah, this guy here, yeah, I know him. I dated him, And like this one woman said, yeah, she said, I told, these guys that I liked, tall men. And she said, this guy here, he told me he was 6'1" or something. And I said, so was he sick? No, he was like 5'4" or something. Then there's, maybe the same lady, she said, I asked this, that guy, what kind of a car do you have? And he said, a Mercedes, Lincoln, I don't know what, whatever. And I said, what did he have? And she said, a 1965 Chevrolet. And I said, what did he say about, oh, she said, he said it was in the garage. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, went on. But I was honest with everybody. But learned, and I did a lot of things like, one day I thought, I think I can date 4 or 5 or 6 women in one day. Not good dates. But I mean, because like living in this, Belton, Missouri or whatever, and there was a couple like that, I dated them at a McDonald's or whatever on their way home from work from Kansas City or whatever. I said, I'll meet you at the, and I forget how many I dated that in one day just so I could say I did it. There was one lady that, contacted me, wrote me. And she said that what she did, she owned a farm and she had a, news to me. I mean, she had they were around her property. Guys were out there drilling for gas, natural gas, around her farm. And they couldn't find any. And then one of the engineers or whoever, prospectors came over and says, ma'am, could we drill on your property? If we find we think there may be gas there. If we find it, you'll get free gas and I forget what else. And they found it, so she had her lights and all kinds of things running. But anyway, now she got that farmland because she was been married like 3 or 4 times. And every time she divorced one of these guys, she ended up with land. And so, and her last one that she divorced, this was in Cass County, she said, I have to have my home barricaded, and she says the sheriff's department, they're terrified of this guy. They've come out a few times, and they are afraid of this guy. So now by the way, I was a reserve police officer, and I was a full-time security officer. Well, come to think of it, I also had a full-time Cass County commission. Not that I had to use it or needed it, but I was given it, myself and this other security officer who worked in Cass County at this small hospital. We both got that. It wasn't but I had that. So anyway, I went down there to meet her and saw her property and saw her whatever. But her last ex-husband, she had, I think I've seen something like that in maybe old cowboy movies or something, or trying to protect themselves from Indians. When I went there, she had, gigantic thing with a thing on the floor that was bolted in, and then it went forward and pushed on the door, so nobody was going to get in there, even if they chopped the door down. And whatever. Anyway, I did a lot of learning. But then, of course, I had with this phone answering, and I got carried away. I wasn't taking advantage of any women or anything like that, but I just got carried away with the adventure. I mean, of doing it. And I had somebody, I had this telephone answering machine receiving my calls, and they would leave messages, and then they would call. I couldn't talk to all of them, but I would talk to them on the phone 2 or 3 times, and then I would meet them, at a shopping mall or something like that. Usually they would say the same thing, Oh, okay, well, when, at Bannister Mall, when we when we meet there, if you're not going to show up and then see me standing there and then, not come over and talk to me. And I said, oh, hell no, I would not do something like that. No way. And I didn't. Now, one lady I picked up Christmas time. I was in Belton, she was in Grandview. And Bannister Mall was the next step or whatever. And I picked her up. Her daughter was singing in a church choir. This lady was religious, And so I picked her up, and I liked, and she liked too, going to bookstores. I love the bookstores in the mall, in the malls or whatever. And so we went into the bookstore and everything. And on the top they had Playboy, Playgirl, Penthouse Letters, maybe something like that. Let me see if I get this one right now. Wait a minute. Playboy had the guys in it. Playgirl, yeah, Playboy. So so we're there in front of this thing, and I said, oh, by the way, do me a favor. Don't buy that Playboy magazine. And well, she didn't. I had to say, because I'm in it. And she said, I forget what she said. I don't buy those kind of magazines. And whatever. I thought, no, you have no sense of I didn't say anything. I just, oh, okay, scratched off the list. Yeah, I'd meet these ladies, and then, but I always, one time, that was a further drive. Talked to this lady 2 or 3 times, and met her at night at Oak Park Mall Shopping Center. And then we went across the street to a nice eating place, and we ate there, and then we left. But I had an appointment the next morning at the same shopping center, the mall, and I met that woman, and we went across the street to the same eating place, except for breakfast, and the waitress was the same one. And she came over, oh, and then I forget what she said to me, like she knew me, oh, and I don't think she knew that this was a different woman. And I remember I had one lady who, of course I would, she called, talked to me, and I talked to her, and then she wanted to meet right away for a drink close by, and I don't drink. I mean, that would have been, I had eliminated her already, but then she said, well, I'm in the bathtub right now, why don't we meet at, whatever. And I said, oh yeah, I know you're in the bathtub. She said, what? I said, well, I can see you. I told you I was into computers and everything, and inside the telephone that you're using, this is before cell phones, there's this carbon thing in there. I forget what it's called. And so you're in a small, the bathroom is small there, and the sound waves are bouncing off, and they come back into the carbon in your telephone there. And so I can't see everything perfectly, but it's reconstructed, the room, and I can see that you are in the, in the bathtub or whatever. And then she said, well, wait a minute. She said, I'm having second thoughts. I don't think I want to, have a date with you. This is, to me and myself, thank God, I can scratch this one off, And that's actually, and I said, oh, now wait a minute. I said, if you're concerned, she said, I'm concerned. And I said, let me tell you, my psychiatrist has signed a paper saying that I am perfectly okay and that I'm not a danger to anybody. And she says, okay, it was nice talking to you, Jim, click or whatever. And then I could scratch it off. Because women were calling in, and I was, leaving their name. And then I didn't know anything about, So I'd call, and there was people, well, I called you and you didn't call me back, or whatever. My name's, Mary. Mary. Yeah, well, Mary, and I'm looking, well, there's 6 or 7 Marys there. So that was something. Learned a lot. That small hospital I worked at, those women, that I told this story to one time, somebody came up. I forget what it was. You see, Carter was president when I was doing that because, he had that energy controversy. This one lady, I dated her. She lived in a nice house in Country Club area of Kansas City, Missouri. But she had sealed off almost all of her rooms in her house. She had a big house. And then, anyway, I complimented her on her breast. I said, your breasts just feel fantastic. And then, another time or whatever, I complimented her on her breast, and then she said, Jim, it kind of bothers me when you say that. I said, oh, I'm sorry. And she said, yeah, I had, when my husband divorced me, I went out and got a breast job, thinking that would, maybe get him back. So she said, I said, I'm sorry, And so anyway, that's one of those stories that I told because something came up, when I was at work, but then working with 2 nurses in the emergency room or whatever. And I mentioned that, that was one of the things I mentioned. I mentioned some other things. They didn't believe any of this, so by the way. The people I worked with, small group of people, they didn't believe it. And then, like, a new nurse would show up. Some new nurse would she's going to work for a few days out there, and she'd show up. So the way the shift thing was, would depend if it was a weeknight or, like, if it was a Saturday or Sunday, they would come in at, I can't remember now, 6 p.m. And then I came in at 7. No, I think I came in at 6. Anyway, I can't remember. Anyway, I'd come in and like to be a new nurse, and the other nurse would say, oh, Jim, this is, so-and-so. She's going to be working out here for a few days. And then I'd say, oh, well, nice to meet you and everything. My name's Jim, and the nurse would say, yeah, they told me about you. And I said, oh, yeah, she said, yeah, they said that you told stories. And I said, of course, I knew at that point, I said, stories? I don't tell stories. She said, oh, they said that you told stories. And I said, you mean that I'm telling things that are not true and saying, and she said, yes. And I said, no, I don't do that. And anyway, she just, she'd already been told, and they didn't believe these stories. I think eventually the nurses, the people I worked with, some of them eventually did. I mean, there's a lot of stories I didn't, things that, happened. Being shot at when I left a hospital, when I got off duty at the one hospital I worked at, we had Dan Stagel shot, and a month or a year or so later, John Galegas, security officer, was shot. I mean, I didn't tell any of those things. I didn't tell any of the story. I didn't tell the stories that, hospital administrators that were very sorry they had any dealings with me. Well, hospital administrator, and then at the next hospital, he wasn't the administrator of the hospital. He was one of 2 assistant administrators, and he lost his job because he messed with me. I mean, I didn't tell any of those stories. But like, I was going on vacation at this small hospital, and everybody whenever we were like a family, there. It was really nice. I loved. I worked there 9 years, and it was. I could almost throw a rock from where I lived and hit the hospital. A little further than that, but um, they asked where I was going on vacation, and I said going to a nudist resort over a weekend. And how? Yeah. And I said, no, I'm going. It's located in Hutchinson, Kansas. It's called such and such, and it's a real nice place. And I've never been there before. Oops, my cat's getting ready to leave. Dee, do I have to open the door for you? And I don't think I have any pants on. Okay, I'm going to pause and then I'll be back. I got to tell this story. Okay, I'm back. So where was I? Oh, okay, I said I was going to, nudist camp. Ha, 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 ha. Okay, I came back and you could tell I'd been to a nudist camp. And they believed me then. Because of sunburn and that type of stuff. By the way, just so you will know, if you're interested in it, and I wasn't, if you're interested in having sex, having an orgy, seeing all this kind of stuff, where is the one place you do not want to go? Okay, skip the Vatican. Okay, not the Vatican. Okay, we're not going to leave the Vatican out. Where do you not want to go? You do not, if you're looking to have an orgy and have sex and all this kind of stuff, the one place you do not, and I knew that before I went to this place, of course. Everybody knows, well, if you're, not everybody knows it. A lot of dumb people. I'm not saying any of you are dumb. Okay. But the place you do not want to go to is to a nudist camp because they don't permit any of that kind of stuff. I mean, they would be out of business. They'd be closed down. You just, they don't tolerate any of that kind of stuff. So it was a nice nudist resort. The local police officer was there with his wife and two small children, naked, He went to the, and I don't, so yeah. But anyway, that was my thing of being a storyteller. And I didn't really tell. I didn't tell anything. I don't tell stories. By the way, these women that I dated, okay, I got married at 26, divorced at 40, approximately. And, okay. So when I started doing this, like dating, and it was educational. I mean, I was, I had a point I wanted to make here. What did it have to do with? Well, it was a good point too. Okay, let me think here for a little bit. Oh man, it slipped. It slipped from my mind. It was such a good point about this because you probably didn't know it or probably didn't realize it. What did it have to do? Okay. It's gone. Do you think my brain cells are going to? And maybe all of them have gone? Well, thank you very much for watching. Hey, come up with a good title for this. The title that I make for this video. I'll have to make it right now. But if you can come up with a good title, it kept people's attention. The man who never drank water, what happened to him? The man who could see people in their homes because of the telephone. Come up with something, because I can't. Oh, that I'm not, not a storyteller. Anyway, thank you very much.